Hello my friends, welcome back to Make It Monday with Bob's Red Mill. If we haven't met yet, my name is Matt Weinstein, aka Glass of Weinstein. I am a dedicated gluten-free cook. I've had celiac for nearly 7 years now. I love to stay creative and curious in the kitchen. Today we're going to be making my signature Glass of Weinstein gluten-free bread. So grab that glass of Weinstein and let's get cooking. Today we're going to be using a plethora of Bob's Red Mill products, as you can see right over here. This was a little bit of a process to figure out the right combinations of flours and proteins and starches to use. And I think I've got it down to a science. I'm going to show you which ingredients we're going to be using. So something that's going to be super helpful is that we're going to be using a lot of flours and starches that are rather high in protein. The importance behind that is because protein and yeast work really, really well together. If you were using flours that didn't have enough protein content, the yeast doesn't really have anything to really munch on and activate. We're going to be using 5 cups total of gluten-free flours and starches and protein powders, starting with 1 2/3 cup of our Bob's Red Mill all-purpose baking flour. I like using this again because it has a lot of chickpea and fava in it, so it has a good protein base to begin with. I've got 1 additional cup of whole chickpea flour going in. I've got 1 cup of our oat flour. The oat flour helps to add a really nice nutty flavor and a chewiness as well. That's been super helpful in this recipe. For some lightness, I've got 1 cup of some extra tapioca starch or tapioca flour. And then to round it all out, I've got 1/3 cup of our almond protein. So that's 5 cups of flours and starches total. And then you can't do anything without your xanthan gum. I've got 5 teaspoons of that going right in. Xanthan gum is going to help to give this that chewiness that we love in our bread. And the last bit for our dry mixture is just 2 teaspoons of salt. Lots of flavor, and it's going to help the baking process as well. Use your whisk, or if you're using a standing mixer, mix all your dry ingredients together until they are homogeneous. Look at that. And it's fun to see all the colors kind of combine together here. Oops. It wouldn't be Glass of Weinstein if I wasn't making a mess in my kitchen, right? Okay, our dry ingredients are all mixed together. Let's activate our yeast. For our wet mixture, I've got 2 cups of warm water. I've got 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry active yeast. And to that, I add 1 tablespoon of sugar. This is just gonna help to wake that yeast up and get it all activated. We're just gonna let this sort of sit, ooh, there it goes, and do its thing. We want it to bloom nicely. It's already starting to be very aromatic. It's going to help our bread to rise beautifully. So let's let this do this thing and we'll revisit it. Our yeast has been blooming for several minutes. I like to combine it all together just because we're using a larger quantity of water for this recipe. Just let all the yeast, all that sugar just get into our wet mixture. We're going to carefully pour all of that goodness right in, as well as 1 egg. This is gonna help bind, gonna add more protein, gonna add a little color. And it goes. Now this next part's gonna be a lot easier if you have access to a standing mixer. If you don't, just be diligent. I'm gonna start with the whisk to just start to add everything together, and then I'm gonna move actually to just using my hands. Just cause I don't have a mixer. Oh no, I'm getting flour everywhere. That is part of this process. If you're not getting flour everywhere, not making your bread right, you know? Okay, so as you can see, everything's starting to come together. This is where my hands are going to come in, haha, handy. So get everything off of your whisk if you're using a whisk. And then I like to grab a little bit of olive oil and get it all over my hands. And then just get your hands up in there and just fold everything together. It's gonna be pretty wet and sticky. Don't be alarmed about that. It will start to come together. And this bread is actually quite rustic. It's gonna have lots of cool grooves and nooks and crannies. And when it bakes, it looks super beautiful. Dare I say, artisanal. There we go. This is all starting to come together. You can really smell that yeast already. So just keep flipping and combining everything together. Scrape off your little your little fingers while you can and get all that incorporated. I think wearing black was a bad decision today, huh? And then this is that kneading process. I like to flatten it out, take it by the edge, flip it onto itself, and press. And just keep repeating that process. And just keep doing that till it's all combined, till all of these dry bits are taken up by the dough. Look at that. She's a beaut. One of the things that I like to do when I'm baking my bread, just to get any of the extra bits, because I'm using a bowl, I like to just sort of do this shaking. There's no technique for this. It's just, I roll it around and it just helps the dough to catch anything on the sides and rolls it into a nice ball shape. It's my little technique. We'll call it the Glass of Weinstein or something.
I would call it gold panning.
And the last step here is just to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil and just continue to roll it around. This is gonna help the dough to not stick while it is rising and proofing. And also olive oil is just such a delicious flavor, no? Maybe get in there, flip it. Get everything nice and combined. Beautiful. Nice and rustic looking. Like I said, you're gonna get all these cool little nooks and edges. And when it bakes and puffs up, they will maintain those. It's really, really cool. Now we just have to wait for 2 hours for this to proof. That's probably the hardest part, is the waiting. So we're gonna cover this with a towel at room temperature and let it proof for about 2 hours to rise, and then we'll revisit it soon. Our bread has been proofing and rising for about 2 hours now. I've got my oven preheated to 400 degrees. Before we get that in, I am just going to grease up my bread tin. Whoops! What I like to do is just get a little bit of oil in there. If you've got a cooking spray, you can just spray everywhere, but if you don't, get some oil, get a paper towel in there, and just zhuzh it all around, just to make sure your bread doesn't stick. And then the next thing I like to do when I'm all done with that is just to get a little bit of gluten-free flour. I'm using some oat flour, and just do a little bit of a dusting, and it'll adhere to that oil. And you just want to sort of shimmy it around. It doesn't have to be perfect. There goes more flour on my floor. And just shimmy it around. This is gonna help not only for our bread to not stick, but it also is gonna give it this really gorgeous, like, bakehouse artisanal look when we get our bread in our tin. Let's go ahead and do that next. You ready for the big reveal? After 2 hours, the dough is beautifully risen. Again, you see all of these gorgeous ridges and bits. So we're just going to gently get this into our pan. Nice and delicate. You don't really have to do too much to it. If you press it down, it might squish and sort of cancel out some of the rising that we've done. Before we go into the oven, I just want to give it a little bit of a sprinkling of some nice coarse sea salt, just to give it a nice pop of flavor on top. Beautiful. We're going into the oven, 45 minutes at 400 degrees. Seems like a long time, but it's pretty dense. We want to allow enough time for this to rise and get beautifully golden brown. See you soon. It's time to check on our bread. Let's grab our oven mitts. Safety first, always. Let's see what we got. Are you ready? Look how gorgeous and golden brown. All those nooks and crannies we've been talking about. I mean, look how beautiful and rustic. That coarse salt all over the top. I'm floored. I'm so excited to try this. I don't even know what to say about this at this point. It's just so beautiful. I'm gonna cut this side. Serrated knife. It's been cooling for a few minutes. Come in close. Come look. Look how gorgeous and bouncy and springy. It's perfect. You have to give it a try. So soft and so tender. It's bread. It's bread. If you're gluten-free and you need a bread recipe, give this a try. You just have to. Thank you once again, my friends, for joining me for Make It Monday with Bob's Red Mill. I'm Matt Weinstein, aka Glass of Weinstein. I'm here on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. Feel free to give me a follow and a like over there as well. Until next time, enjoy